Buongiorno, everybody. Welcome back to my favorite Italian football podcast, Calcio Culture. I'm Vos, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Motts. How are you doing today, buddy? I know it was a busy day at the 9 to 5.
It was a busy day, but we love Calcio Culture. Ciao tutti. I hope everyone's doing well. Can't wait to get into this episode.
Yeah, literally, the Calcio Culture and the Paisan Army gets me through the 9 to 5. It's literally a placeholder for half the day. But anyways, we won't bore you with that, guys. Today, we're continuing our team previews ahead of the start of the season. But before we get into that, we do have some quick shouts today. It's a little bit thin compared to our last episode, given that there's not a whole bunch of news since Monday and we don't have any games going on. But there was a little bit of drama with the couple games we did have, specifically coming out of Paris with the Olympics. Today, Argentina played, and in the 116th minute, Argentina had tied the game up. Fans rushed the field. It's insane out there. Bottles are getting thrown. Players are getting charged. They have to pull everybody off the field. Players going into the locker room. Keep in mind, the game is still going on technically at this point because it's 116th minute. 2 hours later, the teams retake the field. It goes to a VAR decision. Argentina is offside. The goal is pulled back. So it is a Morocco win. Beats Argentina after a 2-hour delay. Absolute lunacy. I don't know what's going on with the security situation. We saw it at Copa America. We saw bottles flying at the Euros. Just, it's predictable at this point. They got to figure it out. Like, you can't be having this. It looks like every game is Ligue 1 now at this point. Like, this happens there, but this can't be a thing. We need to get ahead of this now. Fans are getting confident and know they can get away with it, it seems.
Yeah, it's just complete chaos almost every soccer game now. I mean, the fans are already rowdy enough, and then when the security can't match the fans' rowdiness, you just have a recipe for disaster. I'll just throw this in here. VAR really ruining more celebrations. It feels like anytime anyone scores a goal, they celebrate, and then after the celebration happens, you have to wait a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes for VAR to see if someone's offsides, and then you'll see someone was offsides by their pinky toe or their dick, and then they'll call it offsides. So VAR is always ruining good celebrations.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll have a bigger VAR discussion at some point, so we'll put that one in the bag for now, but I 100% agree there. Going on to some more legitimate news, let's say. Official today, Ricardo Calafiori to Arsenal. We are all sad to see him go. Motts more than most, thinking he would join Juventus. Did not happen. But this is good for Italian footy. If we look at this, we have an Italian player who's going to be playing for a major club, most likely starting in the Premier League. People will see Italian football is alive and well, and there are some serious products coming out of Italy.
Yeah, sound the trumpets, shoot the guns. Calafiori's funeral in the Serie A wasn't long-lived life. He had a small stint at Roma, couldn't really find his feet, then left and came back, had a year, balled out at Bologna, and now is going to the Premier League. So you can bet that I will be tuning in slightly more now, especially watching Arsenal because of him. He's one of my favorite players. So I guess a little excited to watch more of the Premier League, support with some of my Arsenal friends, but sad that he's not on Juventus, sad that he's leaving the league.
Yeah, but
R.I.P.
wish him nothing but the
Calafiori.
best. Wish him nothing but the best. This is a guy that should be a staple of the national team for a long time. Only good things to say about him. This guy burst onto the scene, and hopefully he can continue to just grow and get better.
Yeah, hopefully Arteta can continue to hone his skills and have him get better.
Another Italian player in the news today. Motts pulled this one to my attention right before we hopped on the podcast here. Motts, what were you seeing today on the Twitter scape?
This is the Calcio Culture is one of our favorite players here, Nicolo Barella, pulling up to the Inter practice in style in a purple Lamborghini. Gotta love it. Just a beast on the field and off the field. It was a sick car. Attaboy Nicola.
Yeah, you got to have some balls to pull that off too, and he's one of the guys that does it. Like, that guy's just a beast. I have nothing bad to say about Barella. I absolutely got married, I think, last week he didn't. He was one of the three guys. There's a bunch of Serie A guys who got married this weekend.
I know Chiesa got married. I don't know.
Chiesa, Dybala. There's one more. I forget who it was.
Dybala did. Also, Dybala, do you see what color his wife and his hats were. I know, I get it, it's a wedding, so it makes sense that the woman's hat is white, but he chose a black hat, black and white. He misses Juventus. He misses the Bianconeri. How can you blame him?
Gotta miss it. I would miss it if I was him.
I don't
And then
miss
Motts,
him.
you had another last shout here.
Yeah, just wanted to give another shout out to the Paisan Army here. We had another episode come out, our third one, and we're up to 61 5-star ratings on Spotify. So really appreciate you guys listening and giving us the positive feedback. It really helps us grow. Reach more people that want to listen to Calcio Culture. So thank you guys for that. Love you guys, and keep giving us ratings and tell your friends about us as well. Tell a friend to tell a friend, Paisans.
Yeah, people are telling people in Canada now too. We got a couple Canadian listeners, so shout out to you guys up north. But seriously, we want you guys to get more involved. If you can DM us, shoot us a tweet, anything you want us to talk about, we are more than happy to do. Any suggestions you have for our format, anything you don't like, anything you like, really any comments, we are welcoming with open arms, and we want to continue to build a bigger community and get you guys more involved as much as we can.
Correct. And that's going to be Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Calcio Culture FC. So please, like Bo said, get involved.
Awesome. And with that, we're going to take a quick break, guys. When we get back, we're going to get into the real meat of this episode and give you our squad preview today. And we're back from the break, guys. Today, we're walking the streets of Milan. We're taking you to the blue side of the San Siro to talk about the reigning Scudetto champions, the Nerazzurri, Inter Milan. Simone Inzaghi and his squad are the new dominant force in Italy. They've defined a standard of play for the rest of the league, really, I would say. They play with a beautiful, pack-minded, new school version of Italian football. And no doubt, once again, they have to be our favorites to win the league. They've won 2 of the last 4 Scudettos. And further than that, they're the first Italian side to have reached a Champions League final, which they maybe should have won since Juventus in 2017. Motts, this is really the standard for Italian football now, and this is just a phenomenal club. What they've done has just created, in a lot of ways, what Juventus was, granted to a less dominant degree, but they are by far and away, I would say, the best team in Italy right now, and one of the best teams in Europe.
Yeah, they're definitely a top 5 team in Europe, by far the best team in Italy. And to your point about the Champions League final that they should have won, Pep Guardiola goes on record and says he's a Champions League winner with Manchester City because a player missed a shot within two yards of the box or the goal, and that was obviously Romelu Lukaku. So shout out Romelu Lukaku. What could have been if he made that?
What could have been? Can you imagine?
Even a better run. Inter would have been on an even better run than Inzaghi than they are now, and they're on such a tear. I mean, just to rattle off some stats for you guys, last season they had 89 total goals and they only conceded 24, giving them a 67 goal differential. And the next closest in the league was 30, and that 67 goal differential was the best in the top 5 of the leagues. So they beat City, they beat Arsenal, they beat Leverkusen on goal difference. So they score goals, but they also do not allow goals into their net.
Yeah, this is
they locked up
beautiful.
Out last season.
The way they play is amazing.
Yeah, it's beautiful to watch. I am a Juventus fan. We're supposed to hate Inter. I love watching Inter play. It doesn't remind me anything of paint dry. And they win. They go for the win. They win games. Last year they locked up the Serie A with I want to say 5 points or 5 games remaining. They were just at the end. They were losing games because they weren't playing their starters. They were 19 points clear of AC Milan in second place. It was almost like cakewalk for them. And we know that this league is a very solid league that has a lot of parity, but they made it into a cakewalk.
Yeah, 100%. And this whole new era for Inter started with the appointment of Antonio Conte. He got the first Scudetto, and then Simone Inzaghi took over and basically built upon the framework that Conte had laid with the 3-5-2. Inzaghi then took that, and to get into how Inter are actually going to look, guys, we don't expect a lot of changes, but if you don't know how they play, their manager, Simone Inzaghi, they line up in a traditional, if you just look at it on paper, it's a 3-5-2, and there isn't all that much intricacies involved, really. Like, it's not Pep Guardiola, like, where it's just these insane tactics. It's just an offensive version of a 3-5-2 that nobody had really dreamed of doing until Simone Inzaghi really did that. And the way they play is it's not a 3-5-2 that sits back. They are able to do that, and they do it very well. We saw that in the Champions League final a couple of years ago. They played in a really strong mid block. But what we see from Inter week in and week out is dominance on the ball, dominance in counterattacks, in just every phase of play. They are almost a perfect team for me. It's a shame they didn't get as far as they could have in the Champions League this year, which was a little bit of a fluke to me. But this is literally a top 5 team in Europe. And the 3-5-2 that Inzaghi has created and instilled in this team is so repeatable, and you see it week in and week out, and it is successful every time, and nobody can crack the code.
Yeah, their style of play is really, really pretty. Their counterattacks are lethal. They can get down. They can go from their 18 to scoring a goal in 4 passes. They love playing on the flanks and crossing in with Dimarco and Dumfries. They do play very fluid, however. So you'll see Bastoni move up a lot. You'll see Hakan or Barella maybe take the center back spot for a portion of time. So that's the one little twist that Inzaghi's added to his 3-5-2, how fluid they are, and he really gives his center backs the freedom to go up and attack. But I did want to give a shout out to one person here. It obviously started with Conte and Inzaghi, kind of made them more fluid, but their CEO, their president, or their chairman, Giuseppe Maratta, it started with him. He was on Juventus. They appointed him in, I believe, 2017 or 2018. And since then, he's taken Inter from a team that couldn't some years make the Champions League to now being a dominant force in Serie A, make the Champions League every year, go to the Champions League final, so on and so forth. So wanted to give him his flowers as well.
Yeah, and it's so important to have somebody like that in your club, and then beyond that to have a clear defined style of these are the guys we need to recruit. And it is very clear. Everybody that's recruited here fits into the way they want to play. The center backs are very offensive minded, just so Inzaghi can use them. The wing backs are recruited in a specific way. They're not the most dynamic players, but they do specific things extremely well. Same thing with the strikers they bring in, even Lautaro Martinez. Like, he isn't like a game-breaking player, really, but he's really good at the couple things they need him to do. And everything revolves around that. One of the most important things that we should talk about a little bit further here, Motts, is specifically how Inzaghi has deployed a center back, because that is something we've never seen before. That he really created this whole idea of we're playing a back 3, but our center backs are going to go join the midfield. They're going to become a winger. They're going to be wherever they need to be. They're attacking midfielder. And that has really created something that has been almost impossible for any club to deal with, because it creates overloads in the pitch that nobody expects or game plans.
You don't see them come in.
And even now, when you game plan for it, they can just wait, and then they see an opportunity and they'll run into it and just create an overload in the middle of the pitch. And on a weekly basis, if you're watching Inter, how does this actually play out? If you just take anybody's name out and just say their left center back, their right center back, what would you see here?
Well, let's just take the left side, right? Because Bastoni's probably the one that goes up the most. And you can what will happen is like they will have their link up of play on, let's say, the right hand side with Dumfries and Barella and Lautaro. But then at the end of the play, Dumfries might whip in a cross, and who's on the end of it is Bastoni, because he's in the box. You have a center back in the box who's great in the air. He's like 6'4". He's going to get to it a lot. So Bastoni's knocking in goals on crosses. And then you can either have on the other side, if you're going to link up with Bastoni and Dimarco. Dimarco, we all know, has one of the best crosses, if not the best cross in Serie A. But Bastoni is constantly right above the 18 to whip in another cross as well. So the outside center backs have really free reign to get up and go into the box and put in crosses and knock in headers and goals. And then what will happen is you'll just see the center mid like Hakan fill in their spot. So it's really just complete fluidity on the pitch, and it's just a really, really pretty game to watch. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, and going beyond that to like the next line, the wing backs, the way they play, it's kind of like a traditional wing back, but more so especially with the right wing back who is ordinarily Denzel Dumfries, they have a license to not only get forward into crossing positions, but then get into the box to create more opportunities to score. And that is also kind of a unique aspect of Inter is that they're good enough to allow players to get so high up the field, but then they're also covered defensively because of how they're set up, where it's a back three, and then they have a midfield three, which is really like 1-6, who's kind of their regista, specifically Hakan Çalhanoğlu, who we'll spend some time talking about, and then 2 8s running beyond him. So regardless of how offensive they are, with the way they could have 2 wingbacks in the box at some point, like that actually happens, they're still covered. And it's we call it resting defense when you have the ball, your kind of defensive structure. They're set up in a way to, if we lose the ball, we have enough guys back to cover a counterattack, but we're still such a threat on the other side of things that it just makes it such a hard team to beat. And that's what we really see from Inter.
And to top it off, like when they're not on the ball, they are so compact. It is almost impossible to break them down. We saw Manchester City go 87 minutes without being able to even get a decent opportunity on them. They are so compact. They defend as a team. You'll see sometimes Arnautovic will get subbed in and he'll try to like start a press without the rest of the team, and Inzaghi will get so mad. He's so big on pressing with the team, shifting with the team, staying compact, and Inter is so good at it.
Yeah, and Inzaghi, not only from a tactical standpoint, he's kind of like an Ancelotti, Zidane in a little bit too, where he is so fired up on the sidelines every game, and you can just see he's getting the
He's
most out
drenched
of
in sweat.
every player on the field. Inter, it has a lot of very talented players, but I'm not going to sit here and say these are the most technically gifted players that are across Europe. For sure, no. But he puts them in a place and then drags the most out of every guy that's on the field. We saw it with Acerbi.
Yeah.
Even Denzel Dumfries isn't like the most technically gifted right back, has turned him into one of the best right wing backs in the world. Like, you can go through everybody and he had just this aura.
Yeah, and even Dimarco, we saw him kind of playing a 4-back with Spalletti, couldn't really do it that well. So you got to give props to both Inzaghi and Morata, who are kind of realizing these guys can play in this system, and then Inzaghi gets it out of them, the best out of them. So they have a great relationship, those two. They can really analyze players, see this guy's going to work, and then Inzaghi can get the most out of him.
Yeah, 100%. And just last couple points on Inzaghi. One of the other things that he does that I really like, which we don't see very often now, is he kind of does that big man, little man combo of the two strikers. Granted, with Marcus Thuram, he's kind of a fake big man because of how he drifts out to the left. But it's always Lautaro Martinez and then another guy with him who's kind of like the creator guy, and then Lautaro is the finisher guy. That's just a nice piece that just the way it's set up, again, no matter who you're playing, you always have guys in the box and you always have an outlet pass, and that is so important. And there's a million teams out there that don't do that, right? We're possessing the ball, but then we never have anybody in the box. We're sitting deep. We never have an outlet. Inter does not have that problem. They are built to play any team in Europe and compete in the game, no matter what the competition is. And they're one of the few teams in actually the world that are built that way.
Yeah, they're like I said, they're a very well-constructed team. They play great soccer, and even to your point with the big little man, Thuram, yeah, he likes to shift out to the left, he'll put in a lot of fantastic on-the-ground crosses, and Lautaro, it might be the best in the world at one-time finishes. And even with that, if Lautaro's in the box, yes, he's small, he's fantastic in the air. So it's not really, I mean, the only disadvantage is a taller center back can obviously beat him to the ball. But if you put Lautaro in the air and he gets his head on it, he's very good at getting that on net. So it plays to their advantage very, very well.
Yeah, I would be surprised if by the end of this year, people aren't talking about Inzaghi that aren't Serie A people. Because right now, for whatever reason, Inzaghi isn't kind of talked about as one of the best coaches in the world. And everybody that watches Serie A sees this and knows, hey, this guy's legit. I mean, people know Spalletti now because he won with Napoli, but Inzaghi's the real deal. And I hope at the end of this year, we're talking about it.
I think that's might be in this year at the end of it. If he does what he did last year, it might be the end of it. But he started slow. So he inherited a Scudetto winning team, and then I believe they came in third or fourth that year. He would always tend to make the wrong subs. He would always sub on only offensive guys, go for the win, and then they concede late and lose. They lost a lot of games in his first year. He really learned kind of the perfect balance in his second year, obviously, because they dominated the league. But that could be the reason why he isn't talked about in terms of every other league, and it's just really in Italy. But as I mentioned, if he can do the same thing as he did last year, I think we'll start having him being talked about as one of the best managers in the world. And we haven't even mentioned I think he's undefeated in title games besides the Champions League. Like if he gets the Coppa Italia, he wins it every single time. So he can even manage in the big games. And even though he did lose the Champions League game, I would say Inter outplayed City. So he did lose, but he really knows how to manage the big games as well.
Yeah, and this is a good segue into my last point on Inzaghi before we get into the squad and the different players that you guys should be watching. Number one, watch Inter. Watch Inter as much as you possibly can, because it's literally, this isn't even an exaggeration as somebody who's a Serie A fan. It's actually the best football in Europe. From just a neutral standpoint, you will never be bored watching an Inter game. But really, the only knock on Inzaghi is maybe that he should have won more already. Granted, he's only been there 3 years. He's won 1 Scudetto, probably should have won 2 already at this point. Maybe a Champions League. That's really the only knock on him.
Yeah, I mean, we've given this man enough flowers. He's a very good coach. Inter's a very good team. Like I said, it took him a year to learn how to make subs and read a game, which he's got down now.
Yeah, and with that, we'll move on from Inzaghi again. We're going to be giving him flowers all year. Don't worry. I have no doubt that Inter is going to continue to roll this year. I would be very surprised if we saw anything different from that. But starting with the goalkeeper group, they moved on from Andre Onana a couple years ago and signed a extremely experienced veteran in Jan Sommer. Most of you, when he first went to Inter, may have not seen him a lot. He played in the Bundesliga, was kind of one of those guys that just a dominant shot stopper, went to Bayern Munich, then played last year at Inter. Very good goalkeeper. This is just a guy you throw in. He's going to get you your saves. You need a goalie that's going to get you a save that wins games to win a league. Jan Sommer is that guy. He's not the best with his feet, just an elite shot stopper. We see that with Switzerland time in consistently all the time. That's just what he is. What they did do this summer is sign somebody that's going to compete with him in what I would guess eventually take over, because Jan Sommer is a little bit older. It was kind of a placeholder until they found a guy. They signed Josep Martinez from Genoa this summer. This is a good pickup for them. Again, Inter's in a place where they're building to win multiple competitions. They're adding players throughout the pitch. There's just another guy to add to the team, really, Motts.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. I don't have too much to add there. Jan Sommer's great shot stopper, just a little weak on his feet. There were some moments last season that he was iffy on the ball. He's also 35, getting up there in age, so he's not going to be on the team much longer. So great job by Inter realizing that, saying he might have one more year. Let's kind of do a 50-50 split, 60-40 split with Martinez, have him be better on the ball, have Jan Sommer kind of mentor him for the last year, maybe the last 2 years of his career, and then they have a goalie for the next 5-6 years, depending on how he does. Great move by Inter. I mean, they're just solid everywhere. As we're going to get into it, you'll see that. But I mean, this just goes to show how good they are at business. We have a good goalie. He's older. Let's go get a younger one he can learn from. He can do a little bit things differently. So when we play him, we can play a different style, maybe more play out from the back, because Jan struggles with his feet. But just great business. And I mean, even to your point about Onana, yeah, they let him go, but they sold him for 50 mil. So that was a huge win.
Yeah, and this is just a kind of a tangent. This is a me thing. I'm never a big fan of spending a lot of money on a goalie. I think you can always find a decent goalie. That's my thing. That's why I like they did this. We sold on Onana for a lot. We don't really see a guy we're in the market for. Let's just get Jan Sommer. It'll be cheap, 2-year plug. We'll just get somebody. They bring him in, not a ton of money, and he's going to be your future. Like, that is the right way about going about your business, 100%. And I love it. But there's not going to be any drama from the goalie standpoint here for Inter, so we're not going to talk a ton about this. But moving on into the actual players on the pitch, starting with the center backs, this is a crew. When we had first talked about this podcast and talking about Inter, we said, you know what, there may be a little bit thin back here. And then right before we got on it, we realized they're really not. They played 3 center backs and they have 6 really good players back here. Just to bring you guys through them: Alessandro Bastoni, Francesco Acerbi, Benjamin Pavard, Steven De Vrij, Matteo Darmian, and then the new kid on the block from last year, German international, Jan Bissek. He had a couple appearances last year, did very well in that. But this is a really solid defensive group of center backs that are consistent, which is what we can't say about a lot of teams.
Yeah, I mean, this is a good group. The only knock I would say on them is that they're all a year older and they do have some age in here, like Darmian, De Vrij, and Acerbi, but they fit so well in the system. You didn't see any of their age last year. I'd even talking about Acerbi, like you saw his age on Lazio. He then went to Inter. Inzaghi got him. You didn't see his age. He was one of the best defenders in the league. Absolutely put Holland in his pocket in the Champions League final. He just was going to be on the national team, I think, for maybe start on the national team for the first time of his career, and he was 34, 35. So, like we said, Inzaghi, they realize who can fit in their system, and they can get the best out of those players. And Acerbi is a great example. Last season, they brought in Pavard. Yes, he's getting a little bit older, but I mean, great signing. Adding the depth at that right center back, Pavard. We've seen him play for the French national team, had the goal of the World Cup in 2014 with that screamer outside the box. So good at offense, can create, solid defender. And then the new kid, Jan, the German defender, he's like 6'5". He had a great year last year, scored a couple goals. He's kind of a very, very similar player to Bastoni. I mean, like Bo said, we thought this might be their weakest spot because they didn't really reload. They missed out on a couple center backs like Bongiorno and Caval, but they're pretty solid. And now they're rumored to get Kiwior as well, which would be just another great signing by them. These guys are, if they're loaded. I mean, there's no other way to say it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Besides their
loaded.
age.
Yeah, besides their age, but the best center back is also their second youngest now.
And they have one who's 23. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bastoni's like 24 and Bissek is 23.
And just to talk about how they ordinarily line up, and again, this could be different this year, but last year it was Bastoni as your left center back, Acerbi as your center back. He's a little bit less athletic, which is kind of why they put him there. A little bit worse with his feet, which is a very good defender. And then the right center back, they rotated a ton, right? It was De Vrij, it was Darmian, it was Pavard. But what you see with this is that where they are a little bit weak is left center back, and particularly because you need, in the Inzaghi system, it's especially important to have a left-footed left center back because of how they carry the ball out. We just talked about how their outside center backs are guys that are going to progress the play, going to join the attack, and just with ball carrying, that's important. And what you just alluded to, Motts, is they're now linked to Jakub Kiwior, who was on Arsenal, formerly on Bologna, who's a center back that plays a lot of left back. He does that at Arsenal. So it could be a perfect person to slot in. But what you see in this defensive group is you have a lot of guys that can fill in for each other. You have a lot of guys who can play center back in a pinch. You play a right center back in a pinch. I have no worries about Bissek coming off the left and playing left center back. The only knock is, yes, they're getting older. But beyond that, Bastoni is young. Benjamin Pavard is still pretty young and has been a dominant player in Europe for a long time that people have kind of forgotten about. He won a Champions League with Bayern Munich. This is a very good player. Matteo Darmian, I expect to take a step back this year, but they're going to be fine, right? Like, nobody back there is so shaky where you have to be worried about them, and that's something you can't say about most teams.
Agreed. And if they get that added center back in Kiwior, they're really, they're so deep there now, because now you can throw Bastoni at the center back like you did with Italy. You still have De Vrij and you still have Bissek. Like, you can rotate for days on this.
Yeah.
This 6 to 7 guys that they'd have and just be so solid. And even Darmian can even play right wing back. Like, they got guys that can just play different positions, and that would bring us to the wing back spot as well. And Federico Dimarco, he can even slot in at left center back when needed, if ever needed. So, like, they got guys that can play multiple positions. They got a lot of guys that are just solid players everywhere.
Yeah, and moving on to the wingbacks here, and Motts, what you just pointed out there, let's just spend 1 minute on this, because this is something that when you see it happen, it's insane. I remember the first time I watched Federico Dimarco, he was actually playing as a left center back for Inter. And for you guys that aren't overly familiar with Federico Dimarco, he is like a short builded left back. He's probably like 5'7", 5'8" at the tallest, right? Like very offensive, not very defensive. This is another shout out to Simone Inzaghi for thinking to do this against worse teams. They usually do this. Federico Dimarco is a pure wingback. They will use him as a left-sided center back to create that overload and then also play a traditional left wingback beyond him. And it just shows what Inzaghi is able to do with this team. And then number two, how attack-minded Inter actually are. So if you watch Inter throughout this year, at some point, you'll probably see Dimarco play left center back. When you do, it's amazing to watch. I have never seen anything like it before from a tactical standpoint. And it's very interesting, and it just creates a ton of problems. But to talk about Dimarco and his normal role, usually the left-sided wingback plays a lot of games for Inter. If he goes down, they do have another guy, Carlos Augusto, Brazilian, who was very solid when he did play last year. He was on loan, officially on the team as of this year. This is just a dominant position for them. Dimarco is arguably the best left wingback in the league. I would say he's one of the best in the world at this point. Particularly his crossing ability with his left foot is ridiculous. He can take free kicks. I think the only knock on him is you usually see him come out of games at the end of games. It's something with his fitness. I don't know why that's the case. He does run a lot for Inter. But when he's on the field, he's dominant, period. They feed the ball through him all the time. He is the guy that is delivering the final ball from wide areas.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, that's the one knock. But I mean, with Carlos Augusto, there's not really a drop in play. Maybe there's a little drop in the service that you get into the box, but I'd say there's a little step up on the defensive side with him. So I mean, that bringing him in full time from Monza was once again just great business. They already have one of the best, if not the best, left wing back in the league, and then they're like, hey, let's get one of the most solid backups as well, because we know Dimarco typically can't play the full 90. So we're not really dropping level of play. Maybe we're dropping some service, but when we plug in Carlos Augusto, we're not going to miss a beat. Great business. And then just real quick, I know Vos already touched on it, but the reason why Dimarco can also play that left center back is because he's going to end up so high up the pitch and just whipping crosses again, because Inzaghi's system is my center backs are going to get up. Like I mentioned earlier, Bastoni whips in a lot of balls. Going to be even better if you have Dimarco there whipping in the cross rather than Bastoni, because he's known to do that.
Yeah, and to wrap up here on the left wing back side of things, on Carlos Augusto, when you guys watch Inter this year and you see Carlos Augusto come into the game, actually pay attention to him, because this isn't a guy that we're talking about that's like, okay, he's the backup, he's serviceable. He's good. Carlos Augusto is good in his own right, could start on almost every other team in the league. This is just a very good player that they've managed to get into the squad. It's a guy that you should keep on your radar. I'm sure he'll be linked other places just because of how good he actually is in terms of how much he's actually getting play time. But to flip it to the other side of the pitch, the other right wing back, he plays almost every game. Denzel Dumfries, this is a player that I absolutely love, Mott.
Yeah, I mean, this would be their right wing back is 100% their weakest, not their weakest spot, but their least in terms of, like, they don't have as much depth there. And the reason why is because Denzel Dumfries plays every game, doesn't get subbed out, plays a full 90, goes 120 if you need it, and never runs out of energy. We'll take the challenge to guard best players if they're on the left wing spot, but also will also push up and make that left winger guard him as well. On defense, Logan loves to say he's always on the back post. This man is a monster in the air. He's good for a couple goals with his head each season. He's good for multiple assists. He plays a beautiful on the ground cross. Him and Barella have such a good combination play and link up play. He is a bruiser. He's got bite to him, as Logan would say. He is a solid player.
Yeah, Denzel Dumfries is a dominant defender, insane amount of fitness. And when we talk about wingbacks getting into the box, when Dimarco has the ball on the left side of the field, Denzel Dumfries is 100% going to be on the back post. Logs always talks about Dumfries was just camping out on the back post because against the U.S., Netherlands, when Dumfries scored his goal, Anthony Robinson somehow didn't know Dumfries was there. And the thing with Dumfries is, if the ball is on the left side of the field, Dumfries is going to be at the far post. to score. And just to give
But
you guys like an actual idea of like how offensive he is, 98th percentile for touches in the box for fullback,
and
97th percentile for expected assists, 95th percentile for aerials duels won, 94th percentile for shots. Just he's a defensive machine because of his fitness and his build, and then because of his fitness, he's able to propel himself to the other side of the field to finish off moves. And this, again, we talk about Inter's counterattack. The wingbacks are such a major piece of that.
yeah, there's such a key factor in their counterattacks and just their service in scoring goals. But even in that USA game, he scored a goal, and I'm pretty sure I know for a fact he had 1 assist. I think he had 2 assists. So he just like those stats that Vos just battled off. He scores, he assists, he's in the box, he's creating opportunities. When he gets opportunities, he's finishing them. He is a very, very solid player.
Yeah, and just an important note before we move on into the midfield here, Motts, to what you just said. This is arguably their least deep area on the field. They do have Tajon Buchanan, who's a Canadian international, really good player. He got injured in the Euros. It didn't appear a lot last year just because of how good Denzel Dumfries is. They do have players that can fill in here. Obviously, it would be in a different role, specifically in Darmian, who unfortunately was thrust into a left wing back spot in the Euros, which didn't go so well, but he can play right wing back, and it's very serviceable there. The other guy that does have experience in this role from a defensive standpoint, Benjamin Pavard. And then one more guy that we did see a little bit last year was Davide Fortezzi. He filled in at right wing back spot, and that's just because of how they play. It works well. That's a perfect transition into our midfield group. This is a wonderful.
Real quick,
Yeah. No.
that like you just rattling off their names of who can fill in the right wing back spot, being Pavard and Darmian, when Denzel already gets 90 minutes is ridiculous. Like that's
Ridiculous.
insane.
Yeah, it's insane. This team is, as we go through it, this is going to continue to be the theme. They have depth at every position, but their main guys like play and play and play. But if somebody gets hurt, they're fine. Like we just talked about Juventus, polar opposite. If somebody gets hurt, we're hitting a panic button. Inter is not that.
I bet there with Juventus. I bet.
But getting into the midfield group here for you guys, I'm just going to run you through it really quick. Henrik Mkhitaryan, really experienced player, had a phenomenal season last year playing as one of the 8. A little bit older now, unsure if he'll be able to recreate that. One of our favorite players, Nicolo Barella, Hakan Çalhanoğlu, Davide Fortezzi, and then the new signing on a free transfer from Napoli. What a bit of business this was. Peter Zielinski. Motts, this is a midfield that can play in a lot of ways, which I always love, but it's a group of experienced players with a little bit of young flair in there.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the Juventus midfield last episode and how we thought that this is a very, very solid midfield. I mean, Inter's midfield. You just have proven guys, have been in this league, have been there, done that consistently. I mean, and like you said, Mkhitaryan had a great year last year. Maybe won't be able to repeat what he did last year, 35. Mladen Zielinski there. Played 4 seasons for Napoli, won a Scudetto. Had his first season with Napoli, 5 goal contributions, second 11, third 11, and then fourth 18. So if you're going to get 11 or 18 goal contributions from Zielinski, that's amazing because he's going to answer what Mkhitaryan did last year, and we're not even including what Mkhitaryan's going to do this year. Barella.
Yeah, and this midfield for you guys, how they ordinarily play is a 6, which is like a center defensive mid. In really the way they play that center defensive mid in a more classical sense, he's more of a regista, is a pacer, a creator that plays from a deep lying role. And then above him, they play twin 8s. Somebody is kind of more of a 10 because one of the 8s, 100% of the time, he plays every game, is a dominant force. All he has is grinta, and that's Nicolo Barella.
Yeah, Barella is an absolute dog on the pitch. He gets up and down. If you sub him out, he gets pissed. He
literally is
out.
the king of grinta, like that. Period.
You love to see a player when you sub him out just get so mad, and Barella gets pissed.
Yeah,
Barella can create. He can defend. He as much as Hakan paces it, but Barella can pace it just as well and still be the 8 going box to box, covering for Mkhitaryan, who's older, and Hakan, who can't cover that much. So think about that, guys. Barella is the legs of this midfield. He's paired with Hakan, who's 30, or Mkhitaryan, who's 34 last year, and Hakan has been known to not cover that much ground. That's how good Barella is at covering ground, and yet he still will end up with like 6 goals and like 8 assists in a season. Him and Dumfries just run all game long on that right side of the field. It's really beautiful to watch. And then moving on to that regista, my favorite position, Paisan Army, is the pace setter. My favorite player is Pirlo. Hakan played that position to a T last year. I know Lautaro won the MVP of the Serie A last year. My MVP was Hakan. And here we go again with Inzaghi and Morata. They saw Hakan. He played at the same stadium, wore a different color, red and black. They got him on a free, and they moved him from playing the 10 area where he was in AC Milan to a regista to a 6, and he has never been better in his career. He picks out the passes that he can make are Pirlo-esque. They are insane. You get the ball to him when you're kind of getting pressed and under attack. He's going to get it to the right guy and start the counter attack.
Yeah, as an AC Milan fan, I watched a lot of him, and he was played as like a 10 or a wide 10, and he didn't do well. And this just, again, to your point, shows how Inzaghi sees the player, deploys them in the right position, and they deliver. The way they play, Barella's going to play every game. Hakan Çalhanoğlu might play every game if he's able to recreate what he did last year. This guy was 95th percentile in passes attempted, so it shows how important he is to the team as from that deep role. And what he does better than anybody in the league is pick up the ball, whether it be on the counterattack, whether it be when they're kind of dominating play, and can pick a final ball from a deep position on the field. And this is a position that if you want to become a really good football fan, pick out their number 6, pick out their low-hanging regista player, and just watch him move around the field. And then every time he has the ball, think about where he's delivering it to. We see this with Rodri. Like, the great players you don't notice, but they just pull strings on the field. Toni Kroos, another great example of that. And Hakan Çalhanoğlu did that better than almost anybody in Europe last year. And I would honestly be surprised if he doesn't recreate it at this point, because he doesn't need to run that much, and his skill set isn't any worse. This is what he does. And then beyond that, he can take penalties, he takes free kicks, he takes corner kicks, and it's a perfect position for him.
Yeah, he's great. He's great at set pieces as well. And then moving on from Hakan, they have Davide Frattesi. He is the one that kind of subs in for Barella and makes Barella get mad. But I mean, you have to sub this guy in. He makes such good runs from the midfield into the box and score a lot of goals every season. It's amazing. This guy, they bought him from SAS last season, 33 mil. Almost every major team in Italy wanted him, and he chose to go to Inter, even though they had already had like a starting 3 midfield. He was like, I don't care. I know I can break into this midfield. Maybe he doesn't start, but he might be the best rotational midfield piece in the league because of his ability to get forward and score goals. And real quick, I know we keep praising Morata, but Mkhitaryan, Hakan, and Zielinski, so 3 out of these 5 guys that we're talking about, got on a free.
Yeah.
Once again,
it's just a well-run club at this point, which is so important. The best example of a poorly run club is Man U, and they just go about their business the polar opposite way. They identify players that fit how they already want to play, and then they don't worry about, oh, we need to get a guy that's going to be a superstar in 3 years. They just say, you know what, we need a guy to do this right now. They get them and continue on. And the way we talk about this,
that makes them a superstar because they excel so
100%. Even Mkhitaryan last year was phenomenal, and that like kind of pseudo 10 role. And he had played as a winger, played as a striker. It never really played as like a traditional 10. They saw it and made it work. How this midfield is built, usually you're going to see Hakan Çalhanoğlu and Barella, and then it's who's the third guy a lot of the time. Last year we saw Mkhitaryan. Peter Zielinski made the bold decision of leaving Napoli as one of the best players there to try to break into this midfield. What he brings is a little bit different from a lot of these guys do. He's probably the hybrid, I would say, between Çalhanoğlu and Mkhitaryan. And he's kind of an 8, but he's kind of a 10, can play a little bit deeper as you need him. What I love about the signing is Inter are building a squad to win more than one competition. They have a bunch of midfielders. They can put a combination of them out there to play a different way. If they're struggling in a game, somebody's tired, they can make a change. They're equally as effective. Again, this is a team that's building on. I expect big things from Zielinski this year. I think he's a guy that came here saying, I'm going to play, and I expect him to break into this team. He is a phenomenal player, extremely creative, can create goals, can create assists. Love him. I do not have anything bad to say about him.
Yeah, he's a beast. He's their new number 7 as well. So I don't know the history of Inter's number 7s, but I mean, that's a pretty good number to give a player, right? So, I mean, that'll be interesting to see, but I couldn't agree more. I mean, I wouldn't even say that they're building a team to win multiple competitions. They've already had that and they're adding on to it because they're just so deep. God,
Yeah, they're so deep, especially in the midfield. Like they literally every one of those guys can start on a Serie A team, and they have all of them.
yeah, this is a good midfield.
Yeah, 100%. But moving on to the forward group, which somehow is equally as good as the rest, right? Like this is another just line that they can just roll out, and it's great.
And guess what, guys? They got 2 of these guys that we're going to talk about on a free. There's more of the same.
More of the same.
Free transfers, identifying guys, and then having them excel.
Yeah, and then running you through just the forward group here, it starts with their talisman. Everybody, if you are a Serie A fan, you have to know who this guy is. I will tend to complain about him from time to time, but I can't argue with the numbers, and this guy is producing, and that's Lautaro Martinez. Surrounding him, we have Marcus Thuram, their new free signing, Mehdi Taremi, who has scored 3 goals in preseason in 2 games. Marko Arnautovic, another veteran Serie A player. And then returning this year is Joaquin Correa, who's kind of like this tall, lanky, mobile striker who's Argentinian, who I also really like. My first takeaway from this is Marcus Thuram, Lautaro Martinez are back. I expect them to do exactly what they did last year, and that is create chances and bury chances.
Yeah, real quick, I don't know about if Correa is going to be there next year. I think he's linked out, but if they do, it's just a luxury because he's a solid player to have as your 5th option. I mean, that's insane. But yeah, the starters last season were Lautaro Martinez and Marcus Thuram. Just Lautaro Martinez played 40 games, had 25 goals and 7 assists, won the Golden Boot, won the Serie A MVP. Marcus Thuram, one of those guys that came in on a free. People were like, how's he going to transition? He's coming from the Bundesliga, a little bit more attacking. Serie A is a little bit more defensive, more tactical. Marcus Thuram just played 46 games and got 15 goals and 14 assists. Those are absurd numbers for somebody coming in the first season, didn't need any time to transition. And the 14 assists is really tells you something. And that goes to the point of what Vos said earlier. He likes to shade out to the left, and then he'll whip in a nice on-the-ground cross to Lautaro or maybe an overhead cross to Denzel on the back post. 14 assists for a striker is an insane amount.
Yeah.
And it didn't hinder his goals because he got more goals and assists in 15.
Yeah, and I'll shout out Inzaghi here. What we saw from Marcus Thuram, if you guys watched the Euros and didn't watch a ton of Inter, was Marcus Thuram was deployed as a number 9 with 2 wingers around him for the most part, and he wasn't effective at all. He doesn't really play that role. Inzaghi saw that and said, we're going to play, they always play 2-man striking partnership. What that allows you to do is kind of when you want to be in the middle, you can be in the middle. When you see opportunities to go wide, you go wide. And Marcus Thuram has done that amazingly to complement Lautaro Martinez, who we can spend a little bit of time on here, Motts, because again, this was the Serie A MVP, Golden Boot winner of the Copa America. Is going to be in the Ballon d'Or hunt this year. And this is really one of their biggest superstars. For me, I always say he doesn't do a lot of things for the team, which, to be fair, if you're going to be the leading goal scorer and get MVP, you don't need to do. They build the team around him. All he's there to do is get an opportunity and put it away. And to your point about one-touch finishing, he's the best at it in the league.
Yeah, so you don't need to do a whole lot when the one thing that you do is the most important thing, and that's put away chances and score goals. What I will say he's really good at, and it plays off Thuram so well, is Thuram likes to shade out to the left. Lautaro likes to drop in a little bit closer to the midfield, get the ball, and then progress the play. So where Thuram may give support to the left, Lautaro's giving support to the middle. So it's a great yin and yang, as you said, tall, small. But Lautaro really did take the next step in his career last year. You want to see if he can do it more consistently, because that was a big knock on him, is that he isn't too consistent. But last year he was, and still happening this year, he's been nothing but consistent. So it's gonna be a big season for Lautaro. You're gonna want to see if he can continue the play that he has this season, and if he does, Inter's going to be a real force, because they've also added even more depth, and that might push Lautaro to be more consistent and continue his form, because Taremi can come in, and Taremi scored 82 goals in 5 seasons for Porto. This guy is a bona fide goal scorer. If Lautaro's not playing well, if Marcus Thuram's not playing well, we're going to yank you off the pitch. I think Arnautovic is going to be now their 4th rotational guy, because Arnautovic probably was their weakest striker last year, but now adding Taremi is just adding an insane amount of goals coming off your bench. And it's like, what have you done for me now? And if he's in form, he's going to be playing.
Yeah, 100%. And when you guys watch Inter, you're probably going to see Lautaro Martinez play almost every game. So you'll get used to how he plays. The surrounding cast, I could see changing a little bit this year, depending on how Thuram performed. And Mehdi Taremi as a backup guy, for people that don't know who he is, have never watched him and never heard of him, Taremi was a guy that has been linked to Manchester United, like some of the biggest clubs in the world. It just fell through because of the fee that it costs to get him out of Porto. Now he's a little bit older, decided to come on a free. What this offers Inter is a little bit different profile of a striker. Mehdi Taremi is like a traditional number 9, which is actually something they don't really have. And they were able to add that. When they did have a traditional number 9, that was Edin Dzeko, and he worked phenomenally in this system. Mehdi Taremi is just a more mobile version of that. Maybe a little bit more lethal attacking, a little bit less so aerial threat. But now we talked about the midfield. They have different ways of playing. Now they add another number 9 that, again, adds a different way you can play. And this all goes back to squad building to win more than one competition, squad building to beat more than one different kind of team, whether it be you have to play on the counter, you're most likely playing Marcus Thuram and Lautaro Martinez. If you're going to dominate the ball, maybe you go Mehdi Taremi to be a more aerial threat, maybe to be a little bit drop in, be a target man, pick up the ball, and then do a little bit creative pieces around him. It's just a dominant squad, and they're continuing to do that now.
Yeah, and I'd even say that the reason why they were like, hey, we might need another striker, is if you go back and you remember the Champions League game against Atletico Madrid at home against Inter, they started Arnautovic, and he had like 3 or 4 chances. He didn't put him away. So they only ended that game winning 1-0. And then they fell apart once they went back to Atleti, and they ended up getting knocked out of the Champions League. You have a guy like Taremi in there. The chances that Arnautovic had, Taremi's putting both of them away.
100%.
And they're winning 3-0. And then they're gonna coast on that next game, because you're not scoring 4 goals on Inter in one game. But real quick, one thing I just wanted to say about Lautaro that I forgot originally was this kind of step in his career happened after he was given the captain's armband. So he's a real leader for them now, and maybe that has a kind of plays a factor in him being more consistent, because he knows, I have to lead these boys. He's getting up there in age. He's been there now. Been in the league for a long time. He's played a total of 282 games for Inter. So now it's at that point where it's like, I'm the vet, I'm the captain, I'm the leader, I'm going to lead by example. And that's what he's been doing since they've given him that captain armband.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like he's going to stay. He's been linked away, but he seems like he likes Inter a lot and wants to be there. But to wrap
He
up,
just signed a new contract.
He
signed
did?
a new contract, so
Great,
he'll be there.
that's-
Yeah, he's
love
getting
that.
paid a good amount. I think he's getting like 10 or 12 mil. I think 10 and then plus 2 on bonuses. He wanted a lot. I mean, he
deserves it though, right?
He definitely deserved it because of the season that he had. But he did take a little bit of a discount to stay with Inter. So I think it's till 2026. I know it's not too long, but he's going to be there for at least another year.
Yeah, I love this team. I'm an AC Milan fan, but this is like my biggest problem with being an American football fan is I don't have like a emotional tie to anybody. And I feel like I just want good teams. I want good matchups, and Inter deliver good games every time. Every time. But
Yeah,
on that,
no,
Motts,
I'm
for
a-
you,
Yeah,
finish up.
well, hang on. This is what we talked about in the beginning is that yes, we have our teams, but we want the Serie A teams to succeed. And Inter is right now probably the best chance for them to succeed in Europe. I'm a Juventini. That's in Juventus's biggest rival. I still watch them play because they play a beautiful style of football. And when they're in the Champions League, I want them to represent the Serie A and go far.
100%. And on that, Inter are playing in the Serie A, they're playing in the Coppa Italia, and they're playing in the Champions League this year. How we're going to wrap up every one of these shows and talking about the teams is, what is a successful season for this team? What do you think here?
I think we're going to be pretty similar in our takes here. I mean, a successful season for people were looking at their season last year as somewhat of a failure because they only won the Scudetto. Because 2 seasons ago they won the Scudetto, or they came off the Champions League final. So you kind of expected them to do a little bit more in Europe, and like I mentioned, they fell apart. And then they also didn't do much in the Coppa Italia. I'd say a successful season for them has to be Scudetto. Getting much further in the Champions League, have to reach something with the final in it. More specifically, a semifinal, but I think a quarterfinal would still be solid. And you have to at least reach the final of the Coppa Italia because you're that strong and that deep where like your subs are going to be able to compete against any team really. So that's going to be what is a successful season to me for Inter.
Yeah, I would agree. What I would take it one step further is, if they don't win the Scudetto, it's a major failure. And then number 2, I would say that for them, if they don't win 2 trophies, one of them being the Scudetto and then the other one being one of the Coppa Italia or the Champions League, it's a failure for them. They're at that point now, and they have the squad to win 2, and Inzaghi probably should be thinking we need to win 2 at this point.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Their squad is loaded. They need to go far in every tournament. They won the Scudetto this year by 19 points. If they allow someone to close the gap by that much, that, as you said, it's kind of a failure.
Yeah, 100%. But guys, this is the team you should be watching week in and week out. Every game, turn it on. This is the one to watch. Doesn't matter who they're playing. Get it on, watch it. But that wraps up our preview of Inter Milan for the 2024-2025 season. We're going to take a quick break, but when we get back, we're going to give you a quick Mercato update. Not a ton to talk about since we were just on here on Monday, but we're going to continue to deliver it to that, guys, and we'll be right back. We're back from the break, guys, to give you the Mercato update. It's coming closer to the start of the season. Teams need to start getting their business done. International competitions are pretty much over at this point. But to wrap up Inter here, we'll start with them. A couple of transfer links that are left. We saw Chiesa linked to Inter on maybe a free once his contract expires. For me, I think at this point he's going to re-sign on Juve. He's going to be there. I would also hate this because he doesn't fit into the system in any place. I tweeted about this. He's not going to play in the midfield. He's not going to play as a wingback. He's not going to play as a striker. If he went here, Chiesa's career is over.
This would make very little sense. It might be just kind of smoke from Inter because Juventus and Chiesa are still in negotiations, can't really find an agreement. So Inter's like, hey, why don't Juventus steals a lot of players from us? Why don't we steal some players from them? If Chiesa goes to Inter, I could not agree more. Vos, this would be brutal. He just left the 3-5-2 formation with Allegri, where he couldn't play striker because he wanted to shade too much to the wing. He couldn't play wing back because he's way too offensive. If you're Chiesa, why would you go to Inter? If you're Inter, I can understand why you want one of the best Italians, but I don't understand why you want him because he doesn't fit in your system. And we preached all episode today that they identify people who fit in their system and they go get them. They don't go get guys for their names or what they've done in the past. So this would make no sense to me. This would break my heart. I would hate this. I hope it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I also hope it doesn't. As somebody that isn't a Juve fan or an Inter fan, I don't want this to happen 100%. Moving on, another guy that you liked, you have been spotlighting him specifically to me all of the Euros, and that's Daniel Ndoye from Bologna. He's a winger. He's now linked to Inter, I would guess, as kind of like a right wing back, but this is a little bit weird one for us. What do you got here?
Yeah, a little weird too. He's much more defensive than Chiesa, but I have a very similar take. You saw him deployed as kind of more of an offensive midfield on Swiss, but also covering the wing spot. That's kind of his spot that he plays. He played a lot of wing with Thiago Motta, and like I said, he gets back defensively, but once again, kind of not a traditional wing back. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. But maybe they get him and they kind of transform him and he excels like everybody seems to do in the Inter's system. But kind of to me, I don't love this for Ndoye, but we'll see what happens.
Regardless, definitely a good player. I like him a lot. I hope he has a good season wherever he ends up. But going back to Turin to talk about Juventus, a couple things that popped up today. Seems like Sule is now going to be going to Roma. There was an official bid today, and it seems like they're a couple million off of getting a deal done. Motts, how are you feeling about this one?
A little sad. Because we're sacrificing Sule. He had a really good season last year. Wanted to see what he could do under Thiago Motta, but we want Coop Miners, and in order to get Coop Miners, we need to sacrifice players. I think right now Roma's at 26 with bonuses of 4, and I think Juventus are asking 30 total with bonuses, and so they're only 4 million off. I'm sure they'll probably settle on like 28 with bonuses, making it to like 33. But I do think that this is going to happen within a couple of days. And then Juventus will take that money and go make the first offer for Coop Miners. So kind of bittersweet. I would love to see what Sule can do in a Juventus jersey. I think he's going to be fantastic on Roma. I do think they'll have to figure out how to fill him in with Dybala because they kind of play similar. But Sule is going to excel with De Rossi in that offensive system that they play in, and he will be missed. And I wish that I could see what he did in black and white, but it is what it is.
And flipping the script, today for the first time, I saw Fabrizio Romano actually tweet this. Adeyemi from Borussia Dortmund, he's a winger, has played striker, German international, kind of known for his pace and tight dribbling ability. He's now linked to Juventus. For me, this is a weird one because I'm not sure that he's going to go for a small fee. I would expect 45 to 50 million for this player at this point. And we completely see all those funds going to Coop Miners. I don't see this one getting done. I'm surprised that it's linked like this to the point where Fabrizio is tweeting it. I love the player and I actually think he would fit very well at Juventus. I just don't think this is the guy that they want or need.
I'm in agreement with the fact that he's worth 40, 45 mil. Can be a tough swing for Juve, especially because we're broke. I would love him. I would love to get him. I think he would be a great player. I mean, we need depth because Sule is going to leave. I just don't see how we get Coop Miners and Todibo and him. But we'll see if Giuntoli's cooking, so we'll see what he can swing.
He's maybe adding to his list. He's checked it twice, and now he's checking it a third time because he added some more guys, I guess.
Add as many guys as you want. Bring them all to Turin, baby.
Yeah, I mean, when Juve is good, it's good for everybody. Bringing it on to another major club here, AC Milan. A couple links have been resurfaced. Emerson Royale from Tottenham Hotspur. That link had kind of died down for a couple weeks. It looks like AC Milan may have submitted another bid, or at least the clubs are getting closer, and that would be to bring him in as a right back. Not a lot to say on Emerson Royale, just kind of like a solid modern day wing back / right back. Would be a good fit. Davide Calabria, a lot of people have questions around. I particularly do. So I don't hate this signing for AC Milan. Motts, I don't know if you have any comments here, really.
Just that I know that you guys need a right back. Maybe it'll make Logan happy because whatever his name
Calabria.
is, Calabria will be on the bench. Yeah.
Logan has a deep-seated vendetta against Calabria, to be honest.
That's all I have to add about this.
And then last guy, kind of linked to a couple teams here. Mario Hermosa, been at Atletico Madrid, Spanish international, been there for a couple years. Kind of like a traditional center back build. He's can play in a back 3, can play in a back 4. He's linked to AC Milan, linked to Napoli. Haven't seen anything overly concrete here. The Napoli link had started up, had died down. That has come back around. The AC Milan link is a little bit new. As an AC Milan fan, I would like to see this happen. As a Serie A fan, I would like to see him go to either AC Milan or Napoli. I think at Napoli it would be a very good fit to push Rachmani a little bit further. I think people were disappointed with him last year, although he still does have a very high ceiling. But what I do like about this is a guy playing for a major club who still had a relatively long career ahead of him, looking at the Serie A as a place rather than going elsewhere.
Yeah, bring him to the Serie A. He's a talented guy. He'd help both teams. I'm fine with him going to either one and bringing his talents to the league.
Yeah, and that's our Mercado update, guys. Not a ton of things since Monday. Not a lot of quick shouts either since Monday. But with that, that's going to conclude our episode today. Next time, we will be talking about another Serie A team. I haven't decided who yet, So that's why I'm not telling you right now. But do follow us on all our social media platforms. We're on X, we're on Instagram, we're on TikTok at Calcio Culture FC. This podcast is going to be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. On YouTube, if you're looking us up, we're also at Calcio Culture FC. But with that, I am done for the day. Motts, take us away here.
Maybe I'll decide who we'll talk about instead of you.
Yeah, fair.
Think about that. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
But Paisan Army, thank you for listening. Don't be a gagoots, and Forza Calcio Culture.